Be strong and get healthy. Stretch. Feel great about yourself and have some fun. It's time for you. Fitness is the key to your future. Don't get locked out. Take the challenge. Commit to be fit. Thanks for joining me today on Commit to be Fit. I'm Susie Smith. Fitness is so much more than what you see on the outside. It actually starts deep inside of our bodies. And today's show is about the actual structure that supports our entire body. So buckle your seatbelt and hold on to your hat. It's another exciting adventure of Anatomy and That with Susie and Pat. Well, Pat Sanders, RN, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me again, Susie. I think this is our third time of doing shows together. Always fun.
Anatomy and That with Susie and Pat. It's a wonderful show, and I really am excited for you to be here because Pat has been in the medical community for decades, and she knows what she's talking about. And today, we're going to talk about bones. Before we get started, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Brian Slater of Advanced Anesthesiology Services in Washington on 100 Trish Road. It's down by the Wild Things ball field. But he loaned us this today, and that was very nice of him to loan us this so that we could talk about bones and certain problems that you may be having with bones.
Right. So this is a life-size skeleton. It's about 5 feet 11, 6 feet tall. So it is about the size of an average human male. He's got 206 bones, as we all do, if we're normal.
Okay. We all have males and females, same
number of bones.
Okay.
Our skeletons weigh a little bit differently because, as you know, men tend to be taller than women. Their bones tend to be a little more dense, a little thicker. So the average adult female skeleton weighs about 20 pounds, and the average adult male skeleton weighs about 30 pounds.
Oh.
So you can see from that, if you have a 180-pound person, 180-pound male, let's say, and his skeleton weighs about 30 pounds, that's not much weight for as strong as his skeleton is to support his entire body.
Well, I've read that bones are really strong. What would you compare them with as far as like the strength of bones, of human bones?
It's kind of like when you're building a building and you put up the scaffolding first, the inside, the steel beams on the inside, and then you build the building around it. That's sort of like our skeletons are our scaffolding. And they give us shape and form. The bones of our skull also dictate the shape of our face and, to some extent, what we look like, along with our genetics and our family makeup.
The one thing that you told me, and I mean, I knew this, but it's just not something I think that we think about, but this is alive. Our bones are alive inside of our bodies. They're not just, bones.
Chunks of solid things.
Yeah.
No. And they actually have circulation. We have blood circulation inside our bones. We have nerve supply in our bones. They are living things, and they function as a living thing, and they do a lot of things for us. Aside from holding us up and letting us walk around without falling over in a heap, they also protect our organs. For instance, our rib cage, which is right here, protects our lungs and our heart, and to some extent our upper abdominal organs. Our skull, of course, protects our brains. Our pelvic area, the pelvic girdle here, protects to some extent the intestines and the reproductive organs. So it does have a lot of important functions.
Well, one thing that you were saying I thought was, really interesting about the bones is what goes on inside of the bone. I don't know about other people, but I really didn't think much about what goes on inside of your bones. It's almost like a warehouse.
Sort of.
Or a factory.
They don't just hold us up. They also, particularly our long bones, like the femur here, the thigh bone, and the pelvic bone here, have spongy areas on the inside, which is where our bone marrow is housed. And our bone marrow is one of the things that makes some of our blood cells. For instance, it makes our red cells and our platelets, which are important with clotting, so healing. It also produces some of our white cells. It's a storage house for calcium and some electrolytes and minerals, so that if our body needs them, they can take them from the bone area.
So minerals are actually coming into the bone, like they absorb minerals and so that they can disperse them elsewhere?
To some extent, which is why we need to have a good diet and maybe take calcium supplements for some of us, particularly past menopause age. Many of us take calcium supplements to prevent bone loss.
Well, a lot of people have bone loss kind of early in, well, like you said, after menopause, but some people start earlier. And do the bones actually, like what happens inside the bone when people start to lose bone density?
Well, people who are prone to bone loss are postmenopausal women, mostly because the estrogen that we make in our bodies naturally protects us against bone loss. When we pass menopause, we lose that protective estrogen, so we're more likely to have a risk for bone loss. Other people who are at risk for bone loss are female athletes. People who exercise a lot tend to have less dense bones.
Like,
moderate exercise is actually good for our bones, but excessive exercise can help with bone breakdown.
oh, so it can go the opposite way? Like the maybe professional gymnast or someone like that?
Marathoners, gymnasts, people who exercise to a great degree. Another group that's prone to bone loss is teenage girls who diet excessively. And that can cause your body to leach calcium out of your bones because you're not taking it in to replace what you need. Therefore, your body takes calcium from your bones, causing bone weakness.
Oh, so the bones have the calcium inside. They're storing it there for when you need it in other parts of your body?
That's sort of a good way of thinking about it. We also have calcium in our bloodstream, which we need for our muscles to work properly. So it's good that we have some stored in our bones so that if we, for some reason, are below what we need in our bloodstream, our body can take it from our bones to replace it while we need it.
But you were mentioning the teenage girls and how they are pressured to diet. You know, it's just that sort of, and all of the magazines out there they have people that are anorexic, you know, with modeling clothes and telling you that, you know, this diet's going to work for you. But you're saying that if you over diet and you're not giving your body what you need, this is like a backup system where it has some calcium, but you pay. It's a
You absolutely
give and
do.
take. Yeah, because it's going to take that calcium. If you're dieting, severe dieting, trying to get into a bathing suit or whatever, that calcium can be pulled out of your bones and used elsewhere. And then you're fragile and you can break easier.
Possibly. Sure. Now our bones, the outer portion of the bone is the hard portion of the bone. The insides tend to be spongy because of the bone marrow, but the outer portion is made up of calcium and phosphorus and collagen, which is a connective tissue protein. And again, if you're dieting, you tend to be low on protein also, so it just contributes to the whole problem.
So we need to keep a good diet. And how does exercise tie in with bone strength, resistance exercise? Because I've been lifting a long time, and my doctor tells me that I have strong bones. I eat right, obviously. I'm not dieted down to a skinny person or anything. But actual resistance work, lifting or walking or...
Right. The key is weight-bearing exercise, not necessarily lifting, as you think of lifting weights, but any weight-bearing exercise. For instance, walking is very good.
Okay.
Running too, but that's hard on your joints. It's hard on your knees and your hips and your back. So a lot of people who run find that they have knee or hip pain. They might do better with walking.
I think walking's just as I think you get as many benefits from walking as you do from running. And like you said, it's low impact and you're still getting that resistance work, that weight bearing. So bone is actually perfect material for supporting our bodies. Bone is like the perfect material.
It's very strong, very light, so you don't have to lug around a lot of weight, which is good. It does its job. And it does it well, although there can be some problems with bones.
And what would that be? Like what can happen inside the bones that we're not seeing?
Well, we've talked about eating right and exercising, but even if you do those things, you can still have some problems with your bones. Your viewers may have heard of bone mineral density, which is how strong your bones are. If they've been to health fairs or their doctor's office, they might have been offered a bone mineral density test. This is a very quick screening process. It uses a heel bone. Mm-hmm. So there's a little machine.
Oh, we happen to have one.
You take off your shoes and socks, and you slip your heel bone into the two sides of a machine, and it uses sound waves to assess, as a screening process, the density of the bone in the heel, which is a good indication of whether you're at risk for osteoporosis. If you go to a health fair or your doctor's office and you're offered this test, please don't refuse it. There is no injections, there's no radiation, there's no pain. It takes a couple of minutes, and it really is a good baseline indication of if you need to be aware of your risk for bone loss. The bone mineral density test, normal is -1 to +1 is the normal range for that. -2.5 or lower indicates a risk for bone loss and osteoporosis. As I said, it's a screening test, and it might indicate the need for further testing, which then you might be asked to go on to a mineral supplement, a calcium supplement, or some of the bone building supplements like the Fosamax that's a prescription medication.
I was looking at the femur, and that takes pretty much all the weight of the body, doesn't it?
The leg bones, as you see, the femur is the largest bone in the body, and it does take a lot of the weight, along with the tibia and the fibula in the lower leg. Of course, everything is connected, though. We need them all to work properly.
And this is, so you said that certain chemicals move together throughout the bones. There's a method. What were you saying that travels together?
Well, calcium and magnesium tend to be partners, and sodium and potassium tend to be partners in making your muscles work well. Calcium and magnesium tend to be partners, and phosphorus, in making your bones strong and a good density. So a good diet does contribute to that. If you take in enough minerals in your diet and have a good varied diet with all the food groups, you are likely to get the minerals you need. Now, postmenopausal, a lot of us take calcium supplements just to make sure we get enough calcium in our diet. Some people are also suggested to take vitamin D because vitamin D helps the calcium get to where it's needed.
And so, how long would you recommend, like, being in the sun? Should you be in the sun daily for maybe 10 minutes?
That's ideal. 10 to 20 minutes a day is ideal.
And that helps absorb.
And it's just sunlight.
Yeah, some of the vitamin D and then if you have to take a supplement on top of that, that's fine. But
again, follow the recommendation of your doctor.
And I can see from this, like, I'm always concerned about posture because I'm a weightlifter and I like to keep everything distributed evenly. And I can see where there could be problems if your pelvis would tilt forward or backward. It would just radiate through the whole body then because everything's connected and it's meant to be in a certain plane.
Everything works together.
So osteoporosis, what does it actually look like inside of the bones? Do they actually have holes inside of the bones?
Well, the bone insides normally look kind of spongy with very small openings. And if you have osteoporosis, those openings get larger as calcium is lost. The bone density decreases, and the holes inside the marrow in the bone tend to get larger, which means that you have less structure inside to hold that outer solid portion together, which makes it easier to fracture a bone. Sometimes the first indication you have of osteoporosis is a bone fracture. You can break a hip just stepping off a curb, and I've seen that happen.
So I've heard of that, and it's not actually someone stepped down and then broke their hip. Is it actually the hip broke and they stepped down and fell sometimes?
We never quite know, chicken or the egg kind of thing. But that can be the first indication of a problem, is that you fracture a bone.
So if you are having problems with a fracture, maybe you've had a fracture or two lately, you definitely want to get the bone density test, and just to make sure that you have what you need. And like you said, there are a lot of medications out there that people take, and as we get older, sometimes we lose our balance, or we become a little more unstable, and we fall, and it's really easy to break bones. So That's why I think this is just so important that you came on today to talk about this. So really don't think about the bones. It's like out of sight, out of mind.
Absolutely.
Until you break something.
Right. Well, if you do have a fracture, what happens is that you have clotting mechanisms, just like you do for a cut in your skin, and platelets and healing cells go to that area and fill the gap in the bone where the fracture was,
Okay.
and then lay down new bone cells over top of it. And in many cases, the bone that's been replaced after a fracture is actually stronger than the bone you had before. Just not a good reason to go out and fracture your bones, but it's just an observation we've made.
Oh, so is it like a buildup around it, so it's almost like a little brace?
It's called
or
a callus. Just like you get a callus from overuse in your fingers or your feet. You can get callus on the bone after a fracture, and that indicates there's been a repair that took place, and that area may be actually stronger than it used to be. Another thing that I think is interesting is that lack of activity causes bone loss. So if we're immobile or not moving for just 24 to 48 hours, for instance, if you're hospitalized or you have some injury that keeps you on the sofa for a day or two, it only takes 24 to 48 hours to begin losing bone.
And how does it do that? How does it just starts to get thinner and frailer, and it just starts to lose tissue?
Well, if you don't use it, you lose it. Remember we
That's
said
true.
weight-bearing exercise helps build bone, so not weight-bearing
Helps lose
causes
bone.
bone loss.
Okay.
Right. If you've ever seen pictures of the astronauts on the space station strapping themselves into a treadmill, that's so they can do weight-bearing exercise. The reason it's weight-bearing is because of gravity, and if they don't have gravity, there's no way for their bodies to build bone. So they have to artificially induce bone structure by using a treadmill in space.
So this is an excellent reason for people to get up and get moving, because like I said at the beginning of the show, it's not about, fitness isn't about the outward appearance. I mean, that's part of it. You want to look presentable, you want to feel good, but it's really what goes on inside that radiates outside. So if you have, poor bones and your posture is going to be bad, and what other problems can come along with bones?
Well, keep in mind, too, people who exercise tend to get mental benefits from it also, because you release dopamine and serotonin. Those are feel-good chemicals. So even if you just get up and take a walk, you're out getting fresh air, you're looking at the scenery, you're exercising, you're using your body the way it's supposed to be used, and so you get some mental benefits from that as well. So it can help with depression to some extent.
I can really tell that when I exercise. I can be in a really lousy mood, and then I just go for a walk, which is probably your best exercise to do, is just walking. That's where you always want to start, and it's fine to just stick with walking, because you're breathing in fresh air, and like you said, you're releasing those feel-good hormones, and I know that works for me.
Now, if you have a job where you're at a desk all day, not moving around,
a lot of people
we should try to get up about every hour or so and just walk around a little bit, just to get things moving. It makes it easier to move when you do finally get up. But just 20 to 30 minutes a walk a day is very good for our bones.
And being in a seated position for a long time, that's hard on your back, isn't it?
Well, it causes your muscles to start to spasm, which causes pain. And when you have pain, you don't want to move as much. And then you're immobile. And when you're immobile, you lose bone. So everything is connected.
It's connected. That's
circle of life.
Circle of life. But yeah, this is it's just the perfect material, and it's designed perfectly. And it's amazing, like you always tell me, that there's so many things that have to go on just for you and I to sit here and talk about this. There are
trillions of processes.
Trillions.
On a molecular basis, on a chemical basis, muscular, bone, everything has to work together for us to be able to just do what we're doing right now.
And this is where we start. I mean, I'm always talking about muscles, building muscle and having good posture, but this is where it is. This is where it's at. The skeletal system, because it's holding everything, and you can see how important posture is, because if you start to lean forward, then like the bones, like your scapula in the back, they start to get pulled. Everything gets pulled out of place, and then you start crimping off little nerves, like we talked about on the spine before. So just having a good internal structure is going to really make your life better.
Sure. Lots of things that we do on a daily basis can affect our bones. Smoking is a big one. People who smoke a pack a day or more tend to lose bone.
Oh, that decreases bone?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Partly because it decreases your oxygenation, but just
Okay.
smoking itself with the chemicals that are released in your system increases your risk for bone loss. Another thing is alcohol. Now, we've all heard that a glass or two of wine a night is good for us, and in moderation, alcohol is good for us. But if you have a problem with it, it's not so good, or if you do it to excess,
Because-
it can cause bone loss.
If you have a problem, you're going to drink more than those 2 small glasses of wine, probably.
Right. Medications can also affect your bones.
Oh,
Many of us, particularly after menopause, are on medications for conditions that we may have. Some big ones that cause bone loss are steroids, things like prednisone, deltasone, cortisone.
is it okay to take them for short periods if you need to take them for something?
If you do have to take them, it's best to take the lowest possible amount for the shortest possible time. Some conditions that might be used with steroids are asthma, autoimmune diseases like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia. There are a lot of conditions that people take steroids for. Sometimes with just an injury and inflammation, we're prescribed steroids. So talk to your doctor if you are on it. You may need to limit the amount of time you're on the medication, or you may need to take supplements while you're on it.
Well, let me ask you this. Some lifters, like competitive lifters, have taken steroids to build muscles. I've known of people that have done that. Would it eventually break down the bones then?
Well, that's a little different. That's an anabolic steroid.
Oh, that's a different type.
Right, that's not a mineral steroid.
Okay.
So it's a different kind of steroid, and they have different effects.
That's why you're the scientist and I'm the jock. So we balance out real well here.
Other medications people might be taking that a lot of Americans are taking are antidepressants. Selective serotonin reuptake medications can cause bone loss. And these are things like Zoloft, Prozac, Celexa,
Oh, those are pretty
Lexapro.
common.
Those are very common medications, and we're prescribed them. They make you feel better, but we don't realize that they can also increase your risk for bone loss. So if you're on those medications, definitely check with your doctor and see if you might need to take a calcium and vitamin D supplement to prevent the bone loss that can come from that.
Well, that's good information because I didn't realize that. And there are a lot of people on these medications. You see it
Right.
on TV all the time, the advertisements. And so you just want to be aware. I'm hoping this show just kind of gets you thinking about the bones and how important they are and how important posture is and your diet. We don't want to be skinny like this. Pat was saying earlier, this was from the cabbage soup diet. But I don't know. You don't want to be skin and bones. You want to be healthy, want to have a good diet, and if you are on medications, like Pat said, you want to check with your doctor just to make sure that your bone density is okay. And it's so non-invasive to have your heel tested.
Right.
So-
Just gives you a ballpark idea of whether you're at risk for bone loss or not.
And I think you said it's a sonogram, it's not radiation.
Right. No radiation, no injections, and no drugs are involved. Takes 2 minutes.
Oh, that's excellent. I think everyone should go out and do that. And then, because you want to protect your bones. I have a friend, I think I told you, she didn't know that her bones were bad, and she twisted one day and her foot just cracked and it shattered. And it turns out that she has severe osteoporosis.
As we've mentioned before, sometimes the first symptom that you get for osteoporosis is a fracture. Hers happened to be in her foot. It might be a hip, it might be a femur, it might be a rib.
So if you have that going on, if you have any fractures or you're wondering at all, that you definitely need to get the test because every part of your body is important. I understand that. Like the heart, we say that's most important, but really the skeleton is so important because it's everything. It's your
basis, it's your scaffolding.
Yeah, it's your scaffolding.
Everything is built on it.
So if this isn't healthy, lots of things can happen, like curvature of the spine and different things that happen to the bones, and you just want to take care of them. And I think being aware that the bones are alive, that when I think of that, I just don't think of bones as being alive. But when you think about all the things that you're telling me that go on in here, that things going into the bones, things going out of the bones, it's like a warehouse. And it's a factory. It's making blood cells. It's doing so much for us that you just don't really think about that.
You don't ever think about it, and that's a sign that everything is working well, I would hope.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You don't have to think about it.
When you are thinking about it.
You break a bone, you think about it.
Then you think, yeah. But yeah, I find that very interesting, that it's alive and it feeds us what we need.
Now, if you have a relative, a parent, or an aunt or a grandmother who had a fracture, you might also start to think, maybe I'm losing bone and might need to get it checked out. We can't do anything about our genetics.
Oh, so it can be hereditary?
Yes, a tendency can be.
Okay.
So you can't really do anything about your genetics, but things that we can modify, things like not smoking, not drinking alcohol to excess, getting some exercise, improving your diet. A lot of older people don't have a very good diet, and we need to think about things like that to help our bones out.
Because when people live alone, you should check on your older relatives anyway, but when they live alone, like you said, chances are they aren't cooking as much as they did when they had their family at home. And I know because my mom is 88, and she does have strong bones, but I worry when she walks up and down steps that she may trip and break something, and I don't want her to break anything.
Sure.
Luckily, she has walked all of her life, so she has a lot of weight-bearing bone density built up. Another thing I wanted to ask you, when we say that we're building strong bones, are they actually getting bigger? Do they like get bigger in diameter, or how do they get stronger? Do they tighten up inside? Or?
Not really, because this hard outer structure of the bone can't really get bigger after your growth plates close and you're an adult. It really can't grow any more than that, but it can get more dense on the inside. The structure on the inside can get more dense. So it just is a stronger structure, but they don't actually get bigger around or bigger from side to side.
Okay, that was my question. Excuse me.
Another thing you might want to watch out for is my doctor checks your height now every time you go in. So if you find that you used to be 5'6" and now you're 5'5½", that's another indication that you might need to have your bone density checked. So the conclusion is assess your risk. Think about things that you do in your daily life that can affect your bone density, things like drinking alcohol, smoking, your diet, your exercise level. So assess your risk, see if you need to go have your bone density tested or talk to your doctor about doing that. You need to have a good diet. You need some moderate exercise, and for those of us who are a little older and maybe have some joint problems, some arthritis already, walking is probably the best thing we can do. If you have risk factors, try to modify what you can. As we said, you can't help your genetics, but if you can stop smoking, easier said than done, I know. Cut down on the alcohol, increase your activity level, and also if you do some moderate exercise, it does help your balance. So as we age, we tend to have balance issues. So just some moderate exercise, even yoga, is very good for balance. So it can keep you from falling.
That's exactly. The balance keeps you from falling and keeps you from breaking the bones. So that it all ties in together. And that was a wonderful presentation. I think we learned a lot more about bones today. And I really appreciate you coming on. This has been great. And I hope everybody takes Pat's advice and gets a bone density test. I know I'm in my mid-60s, and I work on working out to try to keep my bones strong. But now I understand a little more about the bone. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being on the show, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you again on here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. And I hope you learned something about bones, and just as always, keep exercising and take the challenge and commit to be fit.